Hello and welcome to the Night Watch Show. Today's episode will cover indirect censorship, a phenomenon that I believe many have been experiencing. And first, I'd like to start by defining what that is. Of course, I think we all know what censorship is. Censorship is when content that you produce, things that you say, whether it be in writing, possibly publishing online on social media, or even televised, would be censored, basically removed, deleted, blocked out, and not heard or seen or observed or experienced by others. That would be direct censorship. Now, indirect censorship would be a bit different. For example, a scientist that's working on some type of a groundbreaking discovery that may change the world and benefit humanity in a positive way, but will never qualify for grant money simply because the research the scientist wants to pursue may result in financial loss by major pharmaceutical companies, and because of that, there's just no incentives or grant money available, and it could even blend its way over into politics where even government-based grants wouldn't be available based on lobbyists and influence from pharmaceutical companies. That'd be an example of indirect censorship, removing incentives that normally one would qualify for in order to suppress discoveries or content. So, for example, let's just wind our way forward to the novel coronavirus. Just the fact that I've said that word right now in this video will draw attention. It will be indexed in some way. It will be algorithm affected in some way. I personally believe, that's my opinion, and I believe I've experienced it, that as soon as you cover that topic, certain red flags go off, certain alarms go off. And it's almost as though if you cover certain topics, such as the COVID-19 novel coronavirus, there I go again, probably be put at the bottom of any search algorithms based on that. But once you do that, certain things seem to happen. For example, if you're broadcasting on social media and you're covering the COVID-19 pandemic in your local community, you may not qualify for certain type of sponsorships or certain types of resources or support or certain algorithm placement, meaning a lot of people may not see or experience or hear your content based on the fact that you're covering the novel coronavirus pandemic. Now, I'd like to just equate that to if there were a world war going on, which essentially there is. It's a war against an invisible enemy, which is the novel coronavirus. But let's say a traditional war were ongoing as it has in the past, and anyone that broadcast information about the war would somehow have their content suppressed, would somehow lose any rights to any type of resources or incentives based on that content, the fact that they're covering the war. Now, I wish that back in the history of our world, during all major wars, we had technologies that we have today so that we would be able to go back from a historical perspective and hear all of the objective perspectives of everybody all over the world that experienced those various tragic times in different ways, in their own personal ways. It would be great to be able to study that in universities for all of time, the perspectives of people living in countries that have been affected by events that have happened historically. This event is happening, the pandemic, which shall become part of history, that people 30 or 40 years from now will be looking back at, and the more content we have that covers it with unique, objective perspectives from around the world, the better. However, I do strongly believe that the way things are currently set up with tech giants around the world is that covering it, essentially, you experience adverse placement and loss of resources and loss of incentives you would normally receive simply because you're covering that topic. Now, on other lines outside of that, I'm sure that many of you may experience that if you're creating your own podcasts or broadcasts or in writing in different ways, various forms of indirect censorship, meaning that because you're covering certain material, you won't receive what you normally would be entitled to had you covered other content. So that's the point I wanted to make about indirect censorship. And my question for everybody is, why is it so bad to cover the novel coronavirus, to share objective opinions and perspective? Now, I certainly do not believe in fake news, and saying things to scare people that are false is just an unethical, immoral thing that nobody should do, and I understand there should be consequences for that. But sharing opinions and objective perspectives should always be encouraged, never suppressed. There is direct suppression. There's also indirect suppression or indirect censorship, where essentially your content is buried because it covers topics that are either not politically aligned with, not economically aligned with, or for any other reason is suppressed based on the content. So in America right now, there's a bit of a battle going on between the US government, essentially through the President of the United States, Donald Trump, and Twitter. And it has to do with basically allegations of certain conservative perspectives receiving unfavorable algorithm placement and search results and various other things, and possibly even those running the companies having their personal perspectives influence the way that they put together their platforms so that it promotes certain information that's along kind of the party line that they're aligned with, or the economic focus that they have based on what benefits them, and other information is not there. So the question I would have is this: it seems like there's a very high standard on those that use social media and all the different online-based platforms to not only provide an objective perspective, but to not talk about certain things. And if you do, then there could be certain consequences. You could be deleted from your social media account, terminated, canceled, blocked, whatever it may be. So how is it then that it's okay for the mainstream media, which some refer to as the lamestream media, which I won't do today, but how is it that the mainstream media is able to broadcast news with a heavy political spin, with underlying agendas, as clearly Fox News and CNN are politicized in that when breaking news happens, there is really a slant towards whatever party line is underlying that network base, and so it affects the news. And I think that that's completely wrong. For example, why is it that CNN in America, regarding coverage of the novel coronavirus, has so much of their screen real estate taken up by a tracker that shows you how many coronavirus cases have been diagnosed in the world and in America, and how many deaths from coronavirus have taken place in the world and in America, but they leave out, they omit the number of recoveries, which I think should be prominent and highlighted. And yet CNN internationally in other countries has the same tracker console taking up a lot of their screen real estate and all their broadcasts, but it also includes global recoveries and recoveries within that specific country they're broadcasting in. And I can only think that in America, they do not want to provide that good news, either because good news just doesn't sell, keep it bad, keep it negative, keep people watching, keep people scared, keep advertisers advertising, or is it simply because the fact that recoveries by far exceed fatalities in a massive way, proportionately speaking, that it makes the administration, the current government, who they are not aligned with politically, look good, so don't put in recoveries. But in other countries where they don't have their skin in the game politically, go ahead and broadcast recoveries. So it seems to me like it's quite clear to see that the mainstream media is influenced by politics, by various agendas, and there's no regulations, it seems. They have the right to broadcast in any slant and skewed manner they wish, whether it be fake news or not. However, for creators in the world of social media, whatever platform you may use, there's a much higher standard where if you say anything that a bot or machine learning or AI deems to be inappropriate, whether it's not along the party line, not aligned with economic interests of the tech giants, or for whatever reason, your content just gets buried and you receive an unfavorable outcome. I've actually had live broadcasts recently, 2 in one day in fact, both within a few hour time period, both live, where I was covering objective, direct news straight from the newswire. And both times when I made a reference that in kind of the greater context of the novel coronavirus mentioned something involving China, immediately within 5 to 7 seconds, a tone which was consistent and stable, it wasn't distortion, began on my feed, and for the duration of the entire live broadcast, you couldn't hear anything I said. My voice was not only suppressed, it was completely gone, and instead there was a stable, consistent tone that replaced my audio track for all of the rest of the broadcast, which was roughly half of the broadcast. Happened twice, and the sound on both was essentially the same. It was stable, and I have both of those videos on my channel. You can check those out, and there's notes on the videos to show you exactly what time that sound began, and I would call that the sound of censorship. I don't have proof. I could be wrong. It may just be coincidence that during 2 live broadcasts in one day, when mentioning China in the context of the novel coronavirus, that a tone began and continued for the duration. It seems like if that is coincidence, I should probably buy a lottery ticket, because that would be quite an unlikely coincidence. But I would consider that direct censorship. So in any case, I wanted to talk to you about indirect censorship. I'm curious if anyone else is experiencing that. I'm curious if you value the right of people around the world to broadcast their own opinions and perspectives and ideas, objectively speaking, on all platforms, and if that should be censored, if that should be suppressed, if that should be unfavorably placed based on content that they choose. And I'm assuming, of course, we're not talking about trying to scare people and making up fake things. We're not talking about doing scary things. We're not talking about encouraging people to do anything behavior-wise. We're just talking about sharing opinions about world events such as the coronavirus. Should that receive fair and equitable placement on search engines or not? Should only the major media giants of the world and the mainstream media be allowed to have their content prominently placed, or should everybody receive fair and equal placement based on how formulas would normally work in the various algorithms out there? And should resources be withheld from those covering certain topics that might not be politically aligned with certain tech companies, or should everything be free and available and open to the world? I'm in favor of the latter: freedom of speech, freedom of opinion, freedom to be objective and to share insights and perspective, and never suppressing that under any circumstances, unless, of course, someone is truly trying to create fake news to scare people. That is wrong. But opinions and objectiveness, while presented professionally and politely and respectfully, should never be suppressed, and also should not be indirectly suppressed. So that's today's broadcast. Hope you found that helpful. I'm literally being attacked by giant flies and their bumblebees in the area. So not only are economies beginning to reopen, but it seems that nature is out in full force today, which is great to see. I'm lucky that this circling bumblebee hasn't stung me yet. Perhaps it'll happen soon. Thank you very much for joining this episode. I wish you all the best.